Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, I know, unfortunately, I've been given the last slot for the afternoon. Everybody's sleepy, tired, wanting to go, so bear with me, give me 25 minutes of your time, and I promise you I'll make it interesting. Okay, thanks, Jackie, for the introduction. My name is Steve. I work for Watamu Marine Association as Project Development Manager. I also work as a consultant, waste management consultant to our local tourism industry in Watamu. I trained as a marine zoologist and as a conservation manager, but in recent years I find that most of my work and time is spent involved in waste management and marine pollution issues. Why is that? That is because waste is now a global problem. It's threatening all of our environments, terrestrial and marine, and we need to look at solutions to that growing problem. So today, I'd just like to talk briefly about a local case study. That's what we're doing on a small scale to reduce the impacts of marine pollution and also looking at how we can best manage our waste generated in our local tourism industry. Okay, first just allow me to talk a little about Watamu Marine Association, the work that we do. We're quite a unique organisation at the coast. We evolved because one way or another, directly or indirectly, we all benefit from our marine protected area through income, through jobs, through livelihoods, whether it's tourism industry, fisheries, or other areas. And what we realized as a community was that to preserve this natural asset and economic asset for the future, we had to work together. That means bringing everybody together around the same table and looking at how we can make things work. And especially bridging the gap between the tourism industry and the community. We saw that from the very beginning, we saw that as a primary objective. And so WMA brings together a wide section of stakeholders from the different sectors, from environment, community, from tourism. So that means our members are made up of hotels, tour operators, conservation groups, environmental groups, community groups, women's groups, youth groups, fishermen. So we really are representative of the greater Watamu community, etc. But what WMA does is look at the gaps. So we see where we need to fill a gap that can enhance our tourism and also benefit the environment. And so let's have a look at a few of those activities. Community-based waste management and recycling, I'll talk about in more detail later because that's one of the major themes for this talk. But this is our biggest current project. This one I would really have liked to have talked in more detail, so I'll just have to come back. And that's ecotourism and community-based tourism. Because in Watamu, we believe this is the future. We believe that quality is better than quantity, and we want to see a return to a more community streamlined tourism industry. Some of the enterprises we've helped support and develop. For example, here we can see mangrove boardwalks and crab shack restaurant. This one in particular is one that we promote as a jewel in the crown of Kenya's ecotourism, and I invite you all to come and visit these enterprises. They are world-class and they really do follow the basic ecotourism principle of leave only your footprints, take only photographs, and give benefits to communities and conservation. All of these projects are run by the community, the boardwalk, the Giriyama Cultural Centre, the community snake park, not everybody's cup of tea, and traditional dugout canoe tours and bird watching, run by the community and for the benefit of the community and the environment. But yeah, more on that another time. This one, dolphin whale conservation research ecotourism. For years we've had our local boat operators running tours, but they didn't have any guiding skills. They weren't following international guidelines. They didn't have the customer services skills, and dolphins were being threatened as a result of their bad practices. So we've put in place the guidelines, we've given hospitality, customer service training, and now this is a product that we can promote, not quite yet as ecotourism, but certainly sustainable. Environmental welfare through advocacy, this is an important part of our work. We believe in sustainable tourism development. We are seeing a considerable amount of unsustainable tourism development at the coast. We're seeing that green line turn into a concrete line at the back of the beach. This is just one example of an illegal tourism development which broke several laws and regulations. It ended up, we took it to the National Environment Tribunal, and as a community we won that case. And so that shows that when you work together as communities, you can actually take on unsustainable developments. And lastly, just one of our more recent projects, certainly the darker side of tourism and a very unwelcome side of tourism. And that is Kenya is increasingly being recognised as a sex tourism destination. It's something we need to stop, and we can start at the community level. We've seen child prostitution at the coast. It needs to end, and we're doing that in Watamu through education and awareness campaigns. And I'd like to say that with a good deal of success in the last 2 years. Okay, so that's WMA, who we are. Let's have a quick look at sustainability. Everybody's talking about sustainability. It's the title of this summit. It's why we're here. Sustainable tourism. Let's take just a second to remind ourselves, what does sustainability mean? According to the UN World Commission of Environment and Development, meeting the needs of the present generations without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their needs. Clearly, there are many challenges, and we're not meeting the targets. But at the same time, we can rise to meet them. We can face those challenges. That's why we're here today. And I'd just like to look at two of those challenges facing not just the tourism industry and sustainable tourism, but on a global level. Such courses, and also through open dumping in the ocean and terrestrial landfill sites that are being poorly managed. And so thousands of tons, millions of tons of waste is impacting our oceans every year. Just looking at the amount of plastic, 220 million tons of plastic is produced each year. These figures are old, it will have increased by now. Plastic is a particularly serious threat to our oceans and marine environment. Plastic breaks down. When it's in the water, it may start off as a big piece. Over time, that piece gets smaller, 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 until it becomes a threat to many, many marine animals that will ingest it accidentally. But also more worrying as well is that plastic becomes microplastics. And what we're seeing around the world today, our beaches and the seabed is covered in these microplastics. It doesn't take a scientist to tell us that that is not good. That's not good for our marine environment, it's not good for the future of our oceans. Because if our beaches and seabeds, our sea floor is made of plastic, then we're in trouble. So we need to look at solutions, which we'll talk about shortly. And also as well, Lorraine touched on it, the 5 gyres. These are huge convergences of ocean currents, which where all of the waste, once it enters the world's oceans, this is where it then congregates. And they're not separate. This is why we have to, when we're looking at waste, we have to look at it as a global issue. Because waste in our oceans is transoceanic. We can see we have our Indian Ocean gyre, we have the North Pacific, we have these different gyres. But sooner or later, over a period of years, they all converge, and that means what was waste in the North Pacific might become waste in the Western Indian Ocean in 10 years' time.
My name is Steve Trott. I'm Projects Development Manager for Watamu Marine Association. One of the biggest threats facing our world's oceans today is waste, and especially plastic waste. Most waste comes from river sources and freshwater sources, which then outpour into our oceans, but also from terrestrial landfills where they're close to the coast and poorly managed, and also from marine vessels and merchant vessels. And so where we are today, we now have these huge floating islands of what we call marine debris. Mostly plastics, but other human-made materials, ropes, packaging materials, nylons, and so they are now floating around our world's oceans in these huge islands, converging on the ocean currents. And what is happening, these plastic marine debris islands are making their way all around the world. So what might be garbage off the west coast of America will eventually become garbage somewhere else in the world, and potentially where we are in East Africa. As far as our region, the Western Indian Ocean, we're seeing marine debris reaching us from as far away as Indonesia and Malaysia. So that's telling us these currents are moving around the whole of the Indian Ocean. What was discarded in Indonesia can eventually make its way to Kenya. So what are we looking at? We're now looking at our world's coastlines and beaches covered in marine debris, covered in plastics. What are the impacts of that? Firstly, in the ocean, the impacts of plastic, it's a threat to marine species, very iconic species, fauna known, for example, sea turtles, dolphins, whales, all mistake plastic and other items, plastic bags, as food items, and they ingest them. Ingesting these plastics causes ill health, eventually death. So that's the impact on larger animals. On a smaller scale, what we have is plastics breaking down. They're weathered in the ocean, they erode. What is once a large piece of plastic then becomes a smaller piece of plastic, which then eventually becomes what we call a microplastic. That microplastic is working its way through the water column, eventually settling on the seabed. Whilst it's in the water column, it's being ingested by fish and other filter feeders that mistake it for food. So what we're seeing is plastic working its way right the way through the food chain, and also, as far as a human threat, onto our plate. The fish that we eat has ingested the plastic, which has toxins, which is a poison. So the threat is serious. It's serious on every level, not just the health of our oceans, biodiversity, but also human health. In terms of the impact on the seabed and the overall ocean ecosystem, it doesn't take a scientist to guess or to prove that impact is not going to be a good impact. If our ocean floor and if our beaches are covered in plastic and eventually becoming plastic, then we're looking at an overall threat to the whole ocean ecosystem, which runs our planet. So, what can we do? What is the way forward? What are the possible solutions to this global problem? In Watamu, we're looking at a local solutions to the bigger problem. So we identified as a concerned community, as the tourism industry, as environmentalists. We recognized the problem. We saw this large increase of plastics and other marine debris impacting our beaches. We could see the effect that was having on the marine life. We were finding turtles, dolphins, fish, which had died as a result of ingesting this marine debris. And also on an economic and a socio-economic level, we saw that our beaches were being polluted, unsightly, ugly, and so that had an impact on the tourism industry. Tourists were complaining to their hotels, saying, "This is not the holiday I expected. I saw a brochure with beautiful, pristine white sand beaches, and I'm seeing all of this trash." So we came together as the tourism industry, as the community sector. We partnered and decided we were going to work together and collaborate. That was back in 2009 in Watamu. We received funding to get the initiative started in that first year, and so we then employed members from our local community, from disadvantaged youth and women groups, to work as waste collectors and beach cleaners. That was for the first year, and we were provided with uniforms and personal protective equipment and makokatanis, hand carts, to carry the trash that we were collecting from the beaches. But then we realised what we were going to do with this huge amount of trash that we were collecting. We realised that we had to dispose of it, but disposal and disposal where is the question. And so disposal to a landfill site again is having another environmental impact, another knock-on effect on the land. So what we then realised, that there was the potential to recycle and reuse a lot of this waste. Hard plastic can be recycled. This has a value in the Kenyan recycling industries, and other products such as bottles, glass bottles, and reusable items can be utilised. So we then started to think bigger. We started a Watamu Community Recycling Centre, which we then directed all of that recyclable and reusable waste to. The hard plastics are crushed by a machine. That processed plastic is then sold to the recycling industries in Mombasa. The income from that comes back to the enterprise to keep it running and to help the blue team. That is the name that we give to our waste collectors, the blue team, because of their blue uniform. And the blue team has actually become an icon for waste management in Kenya. The work that they do and the value of that is being now seen around Kenya as not just within the tourism industry but for the environment, a real asset. But back to the recycling and reusing. So we have the plastic waste that we're utilising, but then we have a large number of bottles, plastic bottles, not just washed up on our beaches but also produced by the tourism industry. Hotels go through how many bottles a day, with their guests, with their clients. Tons of plastic bottles are therefore become waste within the tourism industry. Also glass bottles, wine bottles. Tourists do have a taste for wine. What happens to all of those bottles? Thousands are produced every year. So we looked at that, and then we came up with an initiative to actually put these bottles into construction. And so now at our recycling centre we have rooms and walls made from plastic water bottles, made from glass wine bottles, and these are solid structures. They are just as strong, if not stronger, than a normal building, and they're also having the added benefit of not just reusing waste and taking it out of the waste stream, which is a big volume, but also it's creating an opportunity for communities to actually utilise this waste product and make their own buildings, their own walls, their own houses from bottles. And already we've set that example, and already we have just in our local community we have the first house that's been made from bottles, and we see this as it's a potential for the future of construction in Kenya, or certainly at the community level, where people can take out this waste item free. It's free, it's there in the environment for them to use, and to actually make a structure, a building from it.
How powerful is this to engage the community?
In the case
In terms of sustainability and, of course, the greater gains of involving the people?
In the case of Watamu, it was quite easy, because straight away people saw that there was a value to recycling.
Sorry. In the case of Watamu,
Should we carry on?
take that?
Yeah. In the case of Watamu, it was quite easy. The community members, the waste collectors, immediately were receiving benefits. They were receiving an income from doing that work, from collecting and recycling. Recycling also then, that knowledge then spread throughout the community, and people realised that trash has a value. Trash is cash, and or as we say, taka taka is pesa. And once people understood that, it was very easy to connect and very easy for encourage them to come on board. And so we have our local community members and people who will bring their plastic waste to the recycling facility. They'll be paid a small amount for that, so they benefit from that, and then also the enterprise benefits from the further process of recycling. That is a very powerful message, because art does give a message. It's a message that can travel globally, and when people see that from waste materials you can turn that into a beautiful structure, a beautiful piece of art, that is a strong message. Also as well, the added value is it's again reusing waste and turning it into something that can again has a value. And so we have various levels with our artists. We have our community-based artists who are making curios and attractive artwork that is then sold in the hotel boutiques, sold on the beach to tourists. So that again is another stream of income coming back to the community through waste recycling and reusing. Also, we have artists who create more elaborate artwork and even installations, bigger than lifestyle installations. That is, they have a bigger financial value. They can be sold in galleries, but also that they give a strong message as well. So, for example, we have at our centre we have a bottlenose dolphin that is made from bottles, which is set into the wall, which is more than 5 meters long. That always gets people's attention. It's like, wow, what a beautiful piece of art. How did you make it, etc. In the future, we have plans. We're going to be making whales, life-size whales, from flip-flop waste, from rubber waste, and we're going to be seeing more art installations as time goes on. Yeah, we already have policy in place, tourism policy, environmental policy within the tourism industry. Hotels are required to follow, to implement those policies and to follow those recommendations on many levels of environmental compliance, and in this case on waste management and recycling. Now, the policy is there, and the tourism industry is encouraged to follow it, but as far as enforcement, regulation, monitoring and enforcement, that is not always there. So we have to encourage hotels and resorts to adopt best waste management practices, not only for their own benefit, because that reduces costs. When a resort is following best waste management, then it is reducing the cost of having that waste removed or collected by the local services. And so it makes sense financially, economically, for hotels, resorts to follow best practice. And then what we're trying to do is to encourage resorts to partner and work with community enterprises like ours for joint benefits. And when you look at those benefits, they're multiple benefits. It really is a win-win situation, because the first impact is we're removing the pollutant from the environment, which gives us clean beaches, which is what tourism needs, what our tourists want to enjoy. Secondly, the marine life, the environment itself. I mean, those impacts are huge. You know, by preserving biodiversity, by keeping our beaches healthy, that has a great natural value. Then, when you look at community value, we have our waste collectors and recyclers. They're receiving an income, so that's bringing the income into a poor community. So that has great value. In terms of the recycling, we're now taking out a big volume of waste that was destined for landfill. Landfill is one of the least recommended forms of waste management. It's pollution on land, it's ugly, and it has a lot of knock-on health effects, negative health effects. So by taking out that waste stream, which is a very large volume, if you're taking out the plastic, the glass, all the metals, all the other recyclable, reusable waste, you're now reducing that volume by a great percentage. So it then there's the value to the overall environment and also to county governments in their waste management mandates.